Mina bakabusi nengre, mine pele obiama. Mina bakabusi nengre, me fele sama.
Mina bakabusi nengre, mine pele obiama. Mina bakabusi nengre, me fele sama.
Mina bakabusi nengre, mine pele obiama. Mina bakabusi nengre, me fele sama.
Mina bakabusi nengre, mine pele obiama. Mina bakabusi nengre, me fele sama.
Mina bakabusi nengre, mine pele obiama. Mina bakabusi nengre, me fele sama.
Mina bakabusi nengre, mine pele obiama. Mina bakabusi nengre, me fele sama.
Mina bakabusi nengre, mine pele obiama. Mina bakabusi nengre, me fele sama.
Mina bakabusi nengre, mine pele obiama. Mina bakabusi nengre, me fele sama.
Mina bakabusi nengre, mine pele obiama. Mina bakabusi nengre, me fele sama.
Mina bakabusi nengre, mine pele obiama. Mina bakabusi nengre, me fele sama.
Mina bakabusi nengre, mine pele obiama. Mina bakabusi nengre, me fele sama.
Mina bakabusi nengre, mine pele obiama. Mina bakabusi nengre, me fele sama.
Ayo me fele sama,
Me fele sama,
mama me fele sama,
me fele sama,
isa me fele sama,
me fele sama,
ay mama me fele sama,
me fele sama,
brada me fele sama,
me fele sama, me fele sama, me fele sama, me fele sama, me fele sama, me fele sama.
mina bakabusi nengre, mine pele obiama, mina bakabusi nengre, me fele sama.
Mina bakabusi nengre, mine pele obiama. Mina bakabusi nengre, me fele sama.
Mina bakabusi nengre, mine pele obiama, mina bakabusi nengre, me fele sama.
Mina bakabusi nengre, mine pele obiama. Mina bakabusi nengre, me fele sama.
Mina bakabusi nengre, mine pele obiama, mina bakabusi nengre, me fele sama.
Mina bakabusi nengre, mine pele obiama. Mina bakabusi nengre, me fele sama.
Ayo me fele sama,
Me fele sama,
mama me fele sama,
me fele sama,
isa me fele sama,
me fele sama,
mama me fele sama,
me fele sama,
me fele sama.
me fele sama.
Mina bakabusi nengre, mine pele obiama, mina bakabusi nengre, me fele sama. Ayo.
Mina bakabusi nengre, mine pele obiama. Mina bakabusi nengre, me fele sama,
Ayo me fele sama,
me fele sama,
mama me fele sama,
me fele sama,
isa me fele sama,
me fele sama,
mama me fele sama,
me fele sama,
mama me fele sama,
me fele sama,
isa me fele sama.
me fele sama.
Fire burn them dirty king, blaze up them dirty king, fire burn them king, send him disastrous, and time he fast with us, ancestors walk with us, fire burn them king.
And I'm Warrior Kings and Queens, giving thanks unto the Mother, Father, Creative Life Force of the universe. Kudzai Mudzimu Mukuru. Give praises unto our great ancestors because our ancestors are worthy to be praised. Abibi Tumi, Abibi Fahodi, African liberation and African power for all African people. Giving thanks, giving thanks, giving thanks. We're here today again for another session of ZIVANAYI, the beautiful word in the Shona language of Zimbabwe and other places, which simply means, I know, but not now, okay? All right, good word. What's it called? Which simply means let us get to know each other. Yeah, let's get to know, let us know each other. And so, yeah, we just call it that because we're there for socialize. Yeah, and it's open house. So, I'll kick off with a few topics of anything that's, happening for me or on my mind. You know what I'm saying? And Uno can feel free to come through and contribute to whatever topics that I've raised and or, add your own. Yeah, ask question, speak whatever you want. Though it's blessed as long as there is respect. And you know what I mean, and all these things. So we give thanks. Now, wherever you're watching, yeah, the best place to watch is on the gotkushTV channel, which you can find on YouTube. Yeah. And I'm multi-streaming simply to, promote and maximize the potential of the show. Yeah. But we're streaming specifically, this is a gotkushTV show. And so the link here to join the conversation is in the chat on the gotkushTV platform. Yeah. So come to gotkushTV, all right, and find the video. If you want to join the conversation, and I've posted the wrong link in it. As you do, what I'm saying, as happens sometimes. I just look by the something and realize I post the wrong link for joining the conversation. I posted the YouTube link and not the backstage link. Yeah. So yeah, we're gonna do that now. Yeah, just rearrange the thing differently. You know what I mean? So apologies, family, for anybody who was out here trying to, click the link and it now got through. We apologize, all right. Yeah, we're gonna start to talk right here now. So anybody who wants to join the conversation can do so in about 5 seconds. Because the right link will be posted. I want to big up everybody in the place. Yeah, big up to James O. So he's working whilst watching. You know what I'm saying? We'll give thanks for that. You know what I mean? Don't get fired. We don't want nobody to get fired, from the plantation work. You know what I'm saying? At least until, we have built the platform enough to employ you. You know what I mean? So we give thanks. All right. So, yeah, the pin message in the chat is now the link to join the conversation. So you can feel free to do so right here now if you so wish, kings and queens. Yeah, if you so wish. And we'll see how long we stay here today. There's no schedule for the length of the show, except for we now got over 2 hours, much over 2 hours. Yeah. So yeah, man, you know what I'm saying? So a few things are going, and today is actually has me in a bit of a reflective state. Yeah. And the reason for that is simply that today is the 10th anniversary since the assassination of brother Malcolm Shabazz. Yeah, brother Malcolm Shabazz. All right. And brother Malcolm Shabazz is pictured here next to an image of his grandfather, Omowale Malcolm X. And yes, in the year 2013, on the 9th of May, brother Malcolm Shabazz was murdered in Mexico. Yeah. And it's a very interesting life that the brother led. In some ways, there are many parallels to his grandfather. And what has me in the state of reflection is that a few months before Malcolm Shabazz was assassinated in Mexico, he had written a letter after having been detained, by the FBI in America. And the FBI detained him because he had begun for the last few years before he passed to engage and develop himself and evolve into a political activist. Yeah. And he found himself in places around the world, like Iran and Libya. And I do believe him and Cynthia McKinney were detained, yeah, either in Libya. Cynthia McKinney is a former Democratic senator who then became a member of the Green Party and is just a activist of note, yeah, in today's world. And either somewhere between Libya and Gaza, yeah. I can't remember exactly which one at the moment. But Cynthia McKinney had led some kind of mission to investigate conditions in these places, and Malcolm Shabazz was a part, yeah, of that mission. And they ended up being detained, yeah, together, you know, as a part of the work that they were doing. As I understand it, Malcolm Shabazz ended up in Mexico because he was organizing with the Afro-Mexican community down there, and some altercation with some individual ended up in Malcolm Shabazz being killed. Okay, and whereas the death is certainly considered to be a murder, there are many who consider it an assassination simply because of the letter that Malcolm Shabazz wrote. The fact that we know that the FBI was on his tail, yeah, and we can never take circumstances like that for granted, yeah. And then finally, the passing of Malcolm Shabazz in the manner that it took place, simple as you take it, Malcolm X's father was murdered by white racist organizations. Earl Little, the Garveyite branch leader of the UNIA-ACL, was murdered, assassinated. Omowale Malcolm X himself was murdered, assassinated. And we know that the men who pulled the trigger look like us, but we say without equivocation that the murder of Omowale Malcolm X was orchestrated by the American government, you know, and we know that Omowale Malcolm X and Mama Betty Shabazz didn't have any sons, they only had daughters, yeah. And so Malcolm Shabazz is considered to be the first male heir to the legacy of Omowale Malcolm X. Yeah, Omowale Malcolm X always wanted to have a son. So in honoring Malcolm Shabazz, let us remember that this is the third generation of manhood in a single lineage that has been taken out, yeah, in this way. And so just be mindful of the fact that whereas we may forget and, you know, not pay enough attention to who Malcolm Shabazz is, the forces of European imperialism, they don't forget, yeah. And we have to be mindful of that. So in honoring Malcolm Shabazz, we honor the Shabazz family, his mother, Kubila Shabazz, and all his aunties. We honor Mama Betty Shabazz. We honor Baba Omowale Malcolm X. Yeah. And the entire family once again, and honor this man's life and what we don't know what he would have come to be, brothers and sisters. Yeah. And it's a shame. So, you know, today, once again, if you're just tuning in, is the 10th anniversary since the assassination of Malcolm Shabazz. All right. And so we're just honoring him. So I wanted to put that out there. And also, a great elder, now ancestor, passed away a couple of days ago. Officially, I believe it's Friday. They say that she passed. But this is the freedom fighter known as Mukami Kimati. Yeah. And Mukami Kimati was a member of the Kenya Land and Freedom Army, more popularly referred to as the Mau Mau. These were freedom fighters in the land of Kenya, what is now called Kenya, who were fighting against British colonialism. Okay. And Mama Mukami was a member of this organization, a military combatant within this organization, and also became the wife of one of its field marshals, and probably the most popular name to come out of the Kenya Land and Freedom Army, aka the Mau Mau, the man by the name of Dedan Kimathi. Dedan Kimathi was one of the field marshals, and you know, you can say the leader of the leadership, yeah, within the Kenya Land and Freedom Army. Dedan Kimathi was captured. For those who are not aware, so basically in the 1950s, obviously Africans on the continent are fighting against colonialism. The brothers and sisters in Kenya picked up arms and went against the British, and also South Africans who were allegiant to the British. Yeah, and this is guerrilla warfare in Kenya. And so Dedan Kimathi, being one of the leaders, the field marshals, was captured and assassinated, executed in 1956. Yeah, and his body was buried on the grounds of a prison. Yeah, in Kenya, but the grave was unmarked. Yeah, he was buried in an unmarked grave because they didn't want his gravesite to become a shrine for those who were continuing the revolution, and so he never received the proper burial. Yeah, commensurate with his role as a freedom fighter and the culture of the Kikuyu people. Yeah, Baba Dedan Kimathi is Kikuyu. All right, so let me just play a small snippet of a news report from Kenya about Mama Mukami Kimathi, and we'll come back to the history that I was just explaining a minute ago. Yeah, for those who are just tuning in, I'm just taking a moment to honor Mama Mukami Kimathi, who is a freedom fighter from the Kenya Land and Freedom Army, aka the Mau Mau, who passed away a couple of days ago. All right, at the age of 96, I might add. Yeah, so check in this vibes.
Residents of Njabini village in Nyandarua have mourned the fallen freedom fighter Mukami Kimathi, who passed away on Friday. Family and friends eulogized the late Mukami as a great fighter for the rights of the Mau Mau, who unfortunately died before realizing her lifelong desire to recover her husband's remains and give him a dignified send-off. And as Mary Morki reports, the government has condoled with the family and pledged to cater for funeral expenses. At the rural home of freedom fighter Mukami Kimathi in Njabini village in Nyandarua County, family and friends from near and far arrived to pay their last respects to the fallen independence struggle hero. This corner in her living room, a dedicated shrine to the memory of her late husband, and though he has been dead for 66 years, pictures of him dot the walls like a torch she has kept burning for almost 7 decades. Relatives eulogized her as a compassionate and loving matriarch whose absence will be felt for a long time.
Tumestuka sana ni kuachwa na mama. Hata hatukuwa tunafikiria ati siku moja atatuacha. Bila alikuwa anatushikilia. Yeye ni mcha Mungu sana. Ametuonyesha njia ya Ukristo.
Pastor Francis Gashombe of the Heroes of Faith Church, where the late Mukami worshipped, has praised her as a faithful and dedicated member who was committed in her walk of faith. Pastor Gashombe says Mukami single-handedly donated the piece of land the church is built on.
Kamjua kwa sababu kwanza kama sisi kanisa alitupea pari ya kujenga kanisa. Wanweka akasema tuweze kusomea nje akiwa na shamba kubwa kama hili. Maitudi alifanya tuwe na stima hapa wakati hayati mzee Kibaki alikuwako alisema aletewe stima.
Mukami Kimathi was the wife of freedom fighter Dedan Kimathi. She was among Mau Mau freedom fighters detained at the Committee Maximum Prison during Kenya's struggle for independence. Deputy President Rigathi Gachagua eulogized her as a force to reckon with, who never wavered from speaking the truth and embodied Kenya's struggle for independence.
For those of us who are conversant with this struggle, we want to say it's a very great loss, because all of us have been rallying behind Mukami as our mother and as a symbol of our lessons and our struggle.
Former President Uhuru Kenyatta has eulogized the late Mukami as a symbol of Kenya's liberation struggle. He says, throughout her life, Mama Mukami demonstrated what genuine patriotism means and how citizens are supposed to work towards the progress of their motherland. Azimio leader Raila Odinga also eulogized Mama Mukami as one who had the virtue of courage. His statement reads in part, I will always salute and honor Mukami for the fortitude with which she picked up the pieces, holding her family together, seeking the truth about her husband, and continuing to remind Kenyans of the virtues of patriotism, courage, and unity. Mukami will be remembered for pushing the state to locate her husband's body, which is interred in an unmarked grave at Committee Maximum Prison, and accord him a hero's burial at their Jambini home. Trade CS Moses Kuria says it is possible for the government to corroborate with the British government to locate the body of Dedan Kimathi and have his remains interred together with his wife in honor of Mukami's dying wish.
Has lived her life with fortitude and consistency. Never at one time did she change the ideals which she stood for and which even her late husband, Dedan Kimathi, was surely stood for. And further, I want to say that I believe firmly that it is still possible. Committee is not a whole country. It's a small place. It is still possible, probably with the support of the British government, to identify the actual place where Dedan Kimathi is buried. We exhume the remains of Dedan Kimathi, and as we bury Mukami Kimathi, we should have two coffins, that one of Mukami Kimathi and that one of Dedan Kimathi. May our Almighty God rest her soul in eternal peace.
She was 96 years old at the time of her demise. Deputy President Rigathi Gachagua has announced the government will help the family with the burial preparations. Mary Mwoki, Citizen TV.
Yes, family, you know what I mean? So we're just honoring the spirit of Mama Mukami Kimathi of the Kenya Land and Freedom Army, aka the Mau Mau, also the wife of Dedan Kimathi. Now, if you caught that, you would have heard them say that, as I was saying earlier, Dedan Kimathi was assassinated in 1956. As I understand it, they were in the bush fighting together. Mama Mukami became pregnant, and when her first child was born, she left the bush. Yeah. So she ended up, and whilst Dedan Kimathi remained in the bush pursuing the liberation war, she ended up being detained, yeah, by the colonial government in Kenya. I forget for the duration, yeah. But you know, this new mother being detained by these wicked, evil people. And eventually Dedan Kimathi was captured and assassinated. And as I said, he was buried in an unmarked grave, yeah, because they didn't want the warriors of the Mau Mau to be able to find the body. And so 60 odd years later, yeah, Mama Mukami was still looking for the body of her husband, yeah, well into her 90s. She was still looking for this body. Yeah, and as you heard one of the brothers in the video speaking, that they know the location, it's around the prison, right? But sufficient resources have not been put to work, so to speak, in finding his body. Yeah. And I became aware of the fact that Mama Mokami was still alive some years ago when they thought they actually had found the remains of the Lankimati, but that turned out not to be the case. But a newspaper report came out about this, and as a part of the newspaper report, she was there, you know, still leading the search. Yeah. And so, you know, every now and then since then I've checked in, you know what I'm saying, to know, you know, what's happened with that particular situation. And Mama Mokami, I know that she was suffering with Parkinson's, and so on and so forth. Yeah. So we're just honoring a great warrior spirit. Yeah. I'm made to understand also that throughout her life, she was a significant campaigner for the life and the well-being of the veterans of the Kenya Land and Freedom Army. She wanted to make sure that they were not forgotten in this so-called independence, yeah, that them said them Giwi in Kenya, and that the nation remembered and honored the sacrifice and also supported the welfare of the veterans of the Kenya Land and Freedom Army. So she wasn't as concerned about, you know, her own family and the memory of her husband, but the Kenya Land and Freedom Army and its veterans in general. Okay. So yeah, man, you know what I mean? I just want honor, yeah, her life, you know what I'm saying? I just want to honor her life, you know. All right, family. Where they are is ZIVANAYI open house here. The link is in the chat if you're watching on gotkushTV. So I've shared the link here for those who may be watching elsewhere, to come through and watch on gotkushTV. If you want to click the link and join the conversation, okay, click the link and join the conversation. Raise any points. For us in the UK, you lot's king was coronated, yeah, a couple of days ago also, you know what I'm saying? So I'm sure there are many of you who who want to come forward and share a word of congratulations and you know, for your king. For those who pledge allegiance, yeah, to him, feel free to, you know, come and confess of your sins, yeah, live right about now on gotkushTV ZIVANAYI, and ask for deliverance, yeah. In this regard, you know what I'm saying, make sure you come through and so we can deliver you from the demon, you know what I'm saying, you know, that is, yeah, you know what I'm saying. So we want to deliver you from your king, yeah, here on gotkushTV. I will say this, I haven't watched anything normally, like when Liz did pass away. I watched a significant proportion of the what you call it, something there, the ceremonies, the celebration, yeah, the funeral we are talking about, all right, and also all the honors leading up to and so on and so forth. I usually like to watch these things because I always find it very interesting how our people ritualize themselves, yeah, and it tells us a lot, okay, about the rituals. Their rituals tell us a lot about what they think of themselves, how they see themselves, and when we understand that, we understand how they're going to be operating in the world. Yeah, it seems quite clear to me that Britain is a colonial nation that is very proud of its colonial history, and has no intention of giving up, yeah, that colonial status that it has worked so hard to achieve. Yeah. So I am gonna watch when I get some time, yeah, some of the major aspects of the thing. I will take a team, you know what I'm saying. I wasn't able to this time around because, you know, I was teaching Sematawi in Birmingham, and so I spent the day traveling to and from and then breaking bread with some brothers and sisters in the evening, yeah. But my queen from a few weeks ago, yeah, make we know, say, listen, when I send the pitney at school, yeah, on that Friday there, yeah, when I send the pitney at school that day there, because they got in them, you know, in the whole vibration in the school, yeah, for the coronation. And I think we found out that they had some party planned, yeah. So we say, yeah, that now go on. So yeah, the pitney now go at school that day there. And what happened is me go to school now on the Wednesday. yeah. And when we go pick up the picnic now, them say, well, you know, coronation are going already. So I see the picnic never come out a wave, Union Jack and I go on, I get excited about Charles and all them thing there. So I came home and said to the Empress, listen, this are going from now. So we're not sending him in tomorrow still. You know what I mean? So we just took him out of that institution. You know, we don't really want him there anyway, but circumstances for the time being. And yeah, so in certain time you just have to take back your pitney, you know what I'm saying? From the indoctrination. And he stayed home, and you know what I mean, we put some Marcus Garvey in his head and some Yasantewa, and you know what I mean, you know, and some Umbuya Nahanda, and I ate that, you know what I mean? And yeah, and it's an interesting situation, because one of the major things, yeah, that I saw being commented upon was the number of black people that were depicted on the television all up in the thing. I got up in the morning, you know, got to the train station for go Birmingham, and saw quite a number, yeah, of African people on the road that we have Union Jack, yeah. I got to where them I got to, and all them thing there. All right. And so on the social media, I would say, where are all these black people coming from? Then the video go wrong of the choir, you know what I'm saying? That was, and I believe the choir was from Sierra Leone. Yeah, so my Salone people, them come get your people, them please. Yeah, come get your people, them from Rolia. Yeah, you know what I'm saying. Then now you see the whole heap of Caribbean leaders in particular, yeah, that were at the proceedings, and then you know the ones from the continent, and even the Asante Hene, yeah, you know what I'm saying. Also Osei Tutu the second come true, yeah. The president of Ghana was in the building and all them thing there for the coronation of Charles, yeah. And you know, it's just a very interesting, you know what I'm saying, dynamics. Then now we hear say there was protest because there's a big movement. Well, I say big movement. There's a significant movement in the UK. This is not led by black people, you know. Yeah, and it shouldn't be, because this is for them business, right? Although we have our own in relation to the institution of the monarchy. But whether Britain becomes a republic or not and abolishes its own monarchy is not really my business. Yeah, my business as far as protesting against the monarchy comes from a different place on issues such as reparations and these things. Okay, but there is a strong movement and push in the UK to abolish the monarchy because they see it as an archaic institution and become a republic. All right. So there were some protests at the same time as the coronation was happening, and it sounded like the police, yeah, Dirty Babylon, were a bit heavy-handed. There was over 100 arrests, and the leader of an organization called Republic, who has written a book on why Britain should become a republic, apparently was also arrested. Beer thing are going, because there is a concern about the fact that a peaceful protest was aggressed against by the long arm of the law, yeah. And so it seems that the Babylon have infringed upon the British people's right to peaceful protest and assembly. So a holy parting agua. Then we said them were people pledge allegiance, yeah, to King Charles, yeah, feel no king, all right, you know what I'm saying. And if you know the pledge allegiance again, we want you come and you know seek exorcism at the shrine, yeah, of my art this evening, yeah. You know, so we here say, yeah, pledge allegiance to that one, and then Charles, yeah, Charles say, he might go, what him say? Put the resources. I want to get this wording correct, you know. So hold on then. Let me pull up the wording for this thing, yeah, because Charles says something very interesting. Yeah, you know what I mean? In him speech, apparently. I'm not listening to the speech yet, but I've heard what he said, yeah. And him says something what got so. Hold on there. Let me see if I can find it. He expressed support for research into the monarchy's ties with slavery. Yeah. All right. So, yeah, it looked like he is willing to open up the palace and its archives, yeah, for research into the monarchy's role and Britain's role into the enslavement of African people, yeah. And so was on a radio show, yeah, Africa Speaks with Al Kibbalan yesterday, on Galaxy Radio, and the question was asked, well, how do we see this? Yeah, and the consensus from the panel was basically that this is you know, pointless gesture. It has no substance to it. And I personally said that, well, if the monarchy will, you know, fund the research, yeah, you know what I'm saying, and you know, put up a grant, yeah, from the Prince's Trust, yeah, for reputable organizations who have been engaged in this work for 10, 20 years to come through and have unimpeded access to the entire archives, and that might be useful. At the same time, Brother Glenroy of the Global African Congress said, well, really and truly, yeah, the research that we need for done do already for the most part. Yeah, we just need the institution itself to formally acknowledge its role, and you know, put out the necessary documentation regarding apology, so we can pursue, you know what I'm saying, the legalities of the situation. Yeah. Now I have a particular stance on reparations, which is that nobody has ever achieved reparations but from a position of power, you know what I'm saying? And so if we're ever going to achieve and secure reparations, then we need to be organizing and amassing the power to enforce that demand, not just petition for it. Yeah. But the process is important, because the process is what we use to inform, mobilize, and organize our people. Another thing that was said on the show yesterday, a question was asked of me about the idea that we already know what our ancestors went through during enslavement, and I disagreed. I said, actually, I think very few of us, yeah, have a proper understanding of the institution of the so-called transatlantic so-called slave trade. Yeah. I think very few of us have a working understanding of what that institution was, how it started, how it operated, what companies were involved, how the so-called slave trade related to trade in other goods, how companies developed and enriched themselves during the process, how institutions such as banks and insurance companies were developed within this climate and facilitated, yeah, the institute. I think very few of us, yeah, have a proper understanding of those dynamics. Very few of us even have a proper understanding of the relationship between what became the United States of America and the Caribbean in relation to enslavement. Very few of us from the Caribbean have a proper understanding of the relationship between various different islands of the Caribbean. Yeah. Especially if we go across the colonial divide, so to speak. So how many of us from the English-speaking Caribbean have an understanding of what went on in the French-speaking Caribbean, what is today the French-speaking Caribbean, or the Dutch-speaking Caribbean, places like Suriname? Yeah. How much of us understand what Brazil meant? Yeah. And the fact that the majority of enslaved Africans were enslaved in Brazil. How many of us know really and truly about the resistance, yeah, to enslavement? How many of us have heard of Palmares and the various quilombos, yeah, centers of resistance and warfare that existed in Brazil? And the fact that our ancestors in Brazil had a nation, yeah, that was some portion of the size of Portugal, that existed for about 100 years, yeah, whilst resisting Portuguese invasions and attempts to re-enslave the inhabitants of that nation called Palmares. How many of us know the name Zumbi? Yeah. How many of us understand the importance, the real significance of the Haiti Revolution in the abolition, the eventual abolition of enslavement? How many of us understand 1760 and Taki's revolt and the impact that that had on the enslavement system? Yeah, and the backlash that came against Africans, not just in Jamaica, yeah, where the revolt took place, but throughout the Caribbean, because they put a ban on assembly of Africans, particularly within the context of African spiritual systems. Yeah, how many of us know that a king in the Congo in the 1820s secured the return of over 1,000 enslaved Africans from Brazil? Yeah, very few of us really know what it go on, in my humble opinion. Very, very few of us know the truth. I know what really did go on. Yeah. And so one of the things that the reparations movement and the campaigns associated with it allows us to do is to raise our people's awareness and consciousness of these things, to give us a more detailed understanding of that era and the extent to which it contributed to the world that we see today. The relationship between enslavement and colonialism in Africa and the Caribbean is also a fundamental link, yeah, that we need to identify. Yeah. So yeah, these are all the things that, you know what I'm saying, have been on, you know, my mind this weekend, you know what I'm saying, and this week. And there's always some conversation about reparations, and the Black conservative industrial complex is always on hand to say why, you know, reparations shouldn't go on, or cast some aspersions on the reparations movement. I heard one sister whose name I'm not going to mention, especially because she decided to delete the video, but we didn't see it before it did get deleted still, who said that basically, you know, I support reparations, but nobody has come up with a plan other than going down central London and walking around waving Rasta colors. Yeah. And so I would like to know, for anybody who makes the argument, the extent to which you've even looked at the website of the African Emancipation Day Reparations March Committee, or the Stop the Maangamizi campaign, or any of the groups and organizations that are responsible for organizing that march and or supporting it. Have you ever checked out the Global African Congress website, any of its social media, and the fact that it supports the CARICOM, the Caribbean Community reparations demands? And have you looked at the CARICOM reparations website? Yeah, you know what I'm saying, to see what was being said there. Yeah, nobody who's done any level of due diligence in relation to these things would make that silly argument. Yeah, nobody. All right. About walking around in London and we have red, gold, and green flag. Yeah, like as though that's the extent of the thing. It's not a well-informed argument to make. Anyway, I'm gonna want to talk too much enough. So the link is in the chat, family. The link is in the chat. Yeah. So you have to come over to gotkushTV. I'm sharing the link to come over to gotkushTV so you can get the link if you want to join the conversation. And if you don't, feel free not to, you know, it's all good. If you want to hear me talk for a little while, you know what I'm saying, it just means that the program will be a bit shorter, which is not a problem at all. Yeah. And if you want to also ask questions on the chat, you can feel free to do so. I'm going to check out the chat now, spend some time checking out the chat and hail up the people them in the chat. Yeah. So I've already bigged up James. What's it called? Ali Garrett. Sonic. Big up yourself. You got bed? All right. Okay. Let me see. We got to King Kale in the building. You don't know. Dexter is in the building. And Empress Kush look like she want to come through live. So we want to say King Kale says Dedan Kimati, a great revolutionary against the Germans. Well, that's actually the British. The Germans were in Namibia. Big up ShakaRa for the remembrance, King. Much appreciated. You know what I'm saying? All right, let me bring forward Kushti. Greetings, sis.
Greetings, bro.
How you doing?
I'm fine. You?
Can't complain. We're there still, you know. Good to hear your voice.
Same to you. I saw the young king there as well.
Yeah,
That's
man. Yeah,
the family.
Always. And the puss. Don't forget the puss. You know.
I did see. I wasn't sure at
The,
one
the,
point.
yeah,
It
the
was
puss
so
decided.
still.
Decided that he want to join the proceedings, so him there, you know, decide
No
to pitch himself
problem.
next to the books. Then we want to take in some knowledge, you know what I mean? So, yeah, you know.
Looks
So
like he's all knowledge out as well.
indeed,
Boy.
you know what I mean. So yeah, stay there. So I'm just gonna get through some of the rest of these comments,
No
just in case.
problem.
I just see your comment about the puss. Yeah, big up Kissed by the Sun. Big up On Cold Barber. ShakaRa, if you could do a quick autobiography on Dedan Kimati for the family so they can get more of a sense towards the great Dedan Kimati and wife War for Liberation. I think I kind of did that, yeah. As much as I would be able to in a show such as this right now. However, one of the books behind me is called Mau Mau, The Story of the Kenyan Land and Freedom Army from Within, yeah. And so check out that book if anybody wants to read and get a little more information on the Kenyan Land and Freedom Army. Big up GOJ. Shout out to Zemamnesh, my good sister in Zemamnesh. Good to see you about Ear Up Mama and all them thing there. The Pan-Africanist too. Big up yourself. Let me see if anything. Big up Setem Imhotep. Yeah, man, love to see you about King. Give thanks, much appreciate love. And Ty313 asks, why doesn't CARICOM add African Americans, but the leader wants reparations from the USA? Or am I mistaken? Is on this news? This is a very strange question. The United States of America. Sorry, first of all, I have never heard that CARICOM is pursuing reparations from the United States of America. CARICOM is specifically pursuing reparations from the British. Yeah, so it's mostly the English-speaking Caribbean that is pursuing the reparations movement at the moment, as it relates to the fact that Britain colonized and enslaved the Africans who are in the Caribbean. So I'm not sure where you get that from. I suspect, but I'm not going to say because I don't want to cast no aspersion on the thing. So I've never heard CARICOM suggesting that the Caribbean should get reparations from the United States of America. However, if they were, they would be justified in doing so. And there are a number of instances as to why that is the case, but probably the most stark is Haiti. And the fact that the United States of America invaded and occupied Haiti from 1915 to 1934, yeah, stole gold from that nation, and that gold is still in America, I believe, in the Federal Reserve or something like that. Killed off government officials, rewrote constitution, massacred people who were resistant to the U.S. Invasion of Haiti. The U.S. also destroyed the agricultural industry of Haiti, and that particular event has had an impact up until this day. So yeah, I don't know what the United States of America. Let me read this question again. But leader wants reparations from the USA. Am I mistaken? Why doesn't CARICOM add African American? So on that point, the CARICOM, if you know anything about CARICOM and reparations activists in the United States of America, you will know that they've been collaborating and in solidarity with each other for time. This is not unusual, and I'm going to say for at least 20 years, if not more. Yeah, Africans in the Caribbean have supported Africans in America reparations claim, yeah, and case in many ways. Yeah, I know brothers and sisters from the CARICOM reparations, for example, who were in America in support of brothers and sisters when reparations cases were being put before I believe it's the House of Representatives, but I could be wrong on that. On the particular institution, so forgive me if I've misremembered the particular institution. But yeah, so that collaboration, that support has been given for quite some time. It's not a new thing. Yeah. So but I don't know why any African in America would justifiably be against Africans in any other part of the world pursuing America for reparations for crimes that America has committed against Africans in other parts of the world. I think that's very strange. Right, I'm coming to you, Kush. No worry. Remember you. I'm just gonna get through one more comment and then we're gonna come to you. Reparations. All we want is a fair chance at industry and commerce, and we'll take care of the rest. So this is when you don't know Marcus Garvey. Marcus Garvey was a reparationist in various different forms. For example, Marcus Garvey and the UNACL petitioned the League of Nations for the return of lands that were colonized by Europeans to African people. So reparations is not begging for handouts. This is the misnomer. This is the misunderstanding that people want to push. Reparations is about a debt that is owed. Yeah. And so where others have enriched themselves on the backs of Africans, there is nothing in Garveyism that would suggest that Marcus Garvey was against this. And in fact, there is so much in Garveyism that suggests that Marcus Garvey was entirely about that life. Yeah. Marcus Garvey wanted the return of that which is the Africans to African people, particularly as it relates to land and the right to self-government. Okay, so yeah, I don't know where anybody would get that from. Right, go ahead, Kush.
Yeah, right. Just on the back of that quickly, when you really look into reparations, what I've looked into, it seems like the money aspect is like the least most impactful element when you look at all of the things that they're seriously looking at to bring about real change. For example, like the debt and the fact, I think it's the IMF who can dictate how a country can spend its money, whether it spends it on education or health or so many things that are necessities to people's life and growing. So when you think about, I would definitely like ask people to look into what they're asking for, and you'll realize that although the money aspect is warranted, it's the type of things they're asking for, it will have a bigger impact, a greater impact if achieved.
100%.
So yeah, I just wanted to say that because people really focus on the money aspect, and if they really looked into it, they'd see that there's a bigger picture there, and we should all be supporting that.
You know the wickedest thing though is that what you're saying is not difficult to research. It's very, very easy. Yeah. You know what I'm saying? It's like so just to put what you said into some framework here. There are 5 major components of reparations as it's properly applied in activist movements as well as international law. Yeah. So first of all is cessation. So if there are injustices that are continuing to be done, those injustices must stop. Yeah. And then you have restitution, repatriation, compensation, which is where the money thing comes in. Yes. Satisfaction and rehabilitation. And then you have what's the word? Assurances of non-repetition. Okay, so for example, when you see this comment here, return of lands to develop yourself is different from current calls for redistribution of foreign aid. This is a person who has not studied the reparations movement. Yeah, because if you understand anything about reparations, then you will understand that return of land is one of the major demands. Yeah, and then for a nation like Haiti, whereby the French went there with the safeguarding of the British with 500 and something cannons, and coerced the nation into paying the French reparations for Haiti abolishing its slavery. Yes, then one of the major reparations campaigns is for that money to be returned to Haiti. Yeah. So again, this is an individual that doesn't know about the reparations movement. What's it called? Let me go up. Sorry, I'll get this right.
Let me ask you another question on the back of that while you're looking into this. This is not one of my questions before, though. I just signed off on here.
fine.
But I was thinking that, okay, so say if, and I agree with you, this whole thing about if the monarch should still go on or not, it's not my business. This is an in-house conflict that's got nothing to do with me. But if they do end up winning, right, and there's no more royal family, what happens in regards to the compensation and the claim that they have to atone for if they're abolished?
This is a very good question, and I cannot say that I have the answer to it. Yeah, I would have to consult with people who are more au fait with reparations law in relation to that. However, my inclination would be to suggest that to the extent that the wealth of the institution exists, it would have to go somewhere. Yeah. So
exactly,
that would be right. So do you know what I'm saying? So that would be one aspect of it. And but that would only apply to the monarchy. So that
exactly.
Like the insurance companies, they will still exist, and you know what I'm saying.
Absolutely, yeah. Just that's one little
church
aspect
will still exist. Yeah, you know what I'm saying. So yeah, but I don't know. That it is a very good question to ask.
Yeah. Especially with them now opening in their doors, like they know that the end is intimate. You know what I mean? Like the fact that they're saying come in, it's like, maybe they know something we don't know.
my inclination where that is concerned is because they recognize that a significant number of the younger generation don't care about the monarchy, and maybe would prefer to see it abolished, or just think it's old and archaic and doesn't really need to exist anymore, right? And I think there was some poll that was done recently that said that like 70% of people between 18 and 24 think like that, but they're also calculating that a significant drop in the significance of the monarchy among young people may be also associated with issues of social justice, and so they have to be seen to be having a voice on social justice issues to maintain their relevance and their credibility. You know what I'm saying? So
well, I mean, that would be a good spin, and they are the king of spin doctors. So yeah, absolutely, I could see them doing it that way.
Yeah, you're right. Sorry. So again, one of the aspects of reparations is compensation. There is a monetary aspect to the thing. The fact is that it's not just about money. Yeah, that is the point. Yeah. And so the overabundance of the conversation on money is one that is facilitated by the states, who are trying to negate the credibility of a just claim and those who are allegiant to said states, because a lot of these people, when it comes to reparatory justice, they facilitate it through the United Nations and so on and so forth, who abide by those same principles that I said earlier. But suddenly, when it comes to Africans, they only focus on compensation. They don't do it when it comes to the Jews. Yeah, even the peoples such as the Maoris, who have never really got proper reparations, but some semblance of it. Those who are in those among the indigenous peoples of the Americas who got some semblance of reparations. The Japanese are after World War II, who got, you know what I'm saying? They don't do that then, yeah? So yeah, we're not denying that there is a monetary aspect, and there are reasons for the monetary aspect of it, because money was made out of this institution. Money was made out of colonialism, and African and Caribbean nations today have had economies destroyed, while the claim has been made that these nations are in fact in debt. Yeah. So funnily enough, people that
exactly, why doesn't no affect on the debt aspect? Like
people that make this claim about this 7 trillion, which is a fact, right? They never seem to be have a voice when the claim is made that Africa and African nations or Caribbean nations owe how much million to Britain, America, the IMF, the World Bank in payments in debt, to service debt. They never have that argument. So yeah, there is definitely a monetary aspect of it, and money should be paid as well. So go ahead, Kush.
No, I was agreeing with you, bro.
Yeah. I'm saying.
But I can answer one of my questions now if you like.
Go ahead.
It was about the you was talking about Charles opening up his doors.
Yep.
And I was saying that surely they're not going to open up their doors to the point where we start finding some information where they will seem liable and therefore have to pay compensation. What do you think? I mean, how much, if they're going to open their doors, I think my first question was how much of, I don't think we're going to see everything, all the information that they've got. Although to me, I still think that this is I would still be willing to go and see. I wouldn't just brush it off, because I'm sure there's still things that we don't know about, like to this day, that still
100%.
Yeah. So for that alone, it'll be very fascinating. But interestingly, I wouldn't be too surprised if the information trail just suddenly stopped. You know what I mean? Like,
well, one thing we do know, is that after because remember, reparations, is more than just enslavement. It's also about colonization. Yeah. And I'm vexed because my brain is not bringing the name of the operation to mind. But after the colonization, when the British Empire was being broken up, one of the things that we know that the British did was to destroy a whole heap of documents, about the horrors that they had committed, during enslavement, particularly in places like Kenya and Zimbabwe. And I think I've forgotten the name of this operation. I'm gonna try. It may come to me, because there's a name. It's known that they did this. Yeah. So you're right. You're absolutely correct. Right. It's known that they tend to destroy some of the records that speak to some of their more heinous crimes. Yeah. In the enslavement and colonization of African people. But we have to factor in the extent to which major institutions, in sorry, I should say, one of the reasons for the 7 trillion figure is, a part of that is the calculation for the unpaid labor that was extracted, that was used, and the wealth that was extracted from places in the Caribbean, in this particular instance, as a result. Yeah. So the idea that 7 trillion is simply about aid is false. Now, having said that, there is a significant debate that takes place in the reparations movement about the extent to which the CARICOM nations want to make the reparations issue. I should say the CARICOM leaders and governments want to make the reparations issue an issue of aid more than true reparations. Yeah, that debate exists. There's a good playlist on YouTube where a number of activists came together and analyzed certain aspects of the program and had their criticisms of it in relation to that too. Yeah, so there is that element. Yeah, but the claim in and of itself doesn't come from that place. It's prior to even the CARICOM reparations claim. All right. Right, Kushti, I've got a couple more people in here. So I'm gonna go to Oya. Oya, are you with us? Okay. Oya doesn't appear to be with us. KO.
Big up, son, brother. Yes, ShakaRa. Greetings,
Yes,
King.
How you doing?
Son, sister, Kushti, big up. I'm good, brother, man. As I said, it's always a blessing, brother, to have these constructive channels that we can find a home and talk about our situation without any form of conflicts, you know what I mean? Yeah,
Good
man.
Good times.
I got a question, right? It's from one of our ancestors, Dylan Kamadhi. He came up with three advices for those who want liberation. He was saying, beware of narcissistic intellectuals, also the Christian preachers, and we have to add in the other Abrahamic. I'm just going to add that in. And he also said that don't discriminate and don't lack distribution of food for the collective, because it will make them weak towards the opposition. And the reason I mention that for is because of the reparations, brother, is that our people are relying on the handouts, and we definitely do deserve it, without a shadow of a doubt. So any advice is how to kind of get our people to focus on building while that is happening. And also, one of the reparations thing that we should have is the dungarees and those companies, the sugarcane, which they benefit off, that we should also own that. What's your opinions on that, brother?
Repeat your last word. Repeat your last word. Well, make sure we get it proper.
The companies that exploited our ancestors are prevailing. Like, for example, the clothes companies and the resources like the sugarcane, etc. One of the reparations that I propose that we should own that as well. So basically, compensate that we own that, so we can dispute it, being how it's based upon our ancestors' work.
All right, so maybe this might be, and again, I have my criticisms of this program, but it may it will allow people to get an understanding of the breadth of the thing. To your first question, as far as I am concerned, the reparations conversation is useless if it's not taking place in the context of a broader liberation and decolonization movement. When we talk about the fact that one of the principles in terms of reparations is cessation, i.e. an end to the injustices, then we have to factor in the fact that the injustices still continue. Okay, so a significant aspect of it is organizing ourselves around the things that are still taking place. The things and the issues such as, has anybody seen this video going around about the miners in the Congo being submerged under how much foot of land, and brothers and sisters have to go in there and digging out people?
Yeah.
No, I ain't seen that. You have to send that, man.
Right, but all of those realities are built upon the neo-colonial relationships that currently exist. We've been having a conversation about money, and even on the monetary level, there is a report that was done called I believe Honest Accounts or something like that, that sought to dispel the myth that Africa is in fact indebted to the rest of the world. And it did the calculations, and it came out with the figure that Africa as a continent is a net creditor to the global economy. So for every form of aid that it receives, far more leaves Africa. What's it called? In terms of profits, from corporations who pay very little to no tax, you know what I'm saying, and them kind of things there, among other things, right? So there are those issues, that are happening at the moment. We look at things like Shell in Nigeria.
So are they saying that they should go to the companies then? Should companies have an aspect, especially companies who are literally tied into making a profit, like you elegantly said, solely due to colonization, and like what Cal said, should they be made, like some of these companies, like you said, have been here from the beginning, like they've had ties
over 100 years. So like if you think about, like, for example, one of the biggest banks in the world right now is JP Morgan. JP Morgan had investments in the Congo under King Leopold II,
That's right.
the man who was responsible for half of the population, right? Just what I'm saying. So the mass murderer, the mass genocidal murdering of the Congo was invested in by American and British corporations, right?
Well, that's dirty money if ever I ever heard it.
Right, you know what I'm saying? That still exists
Blood
today.
money.
The Beers and all them things, the Oppenheimer, they were around from them time there. So
That's
and they still exist. They still exist today. So there's all that kind of But I'm saying these things are still going on. So
Yeah.
it's not so much about trying to get us off the idea of and the focus of money. It's about trying to organize us around what is taking place right now. Yeah,
being aware.
Right. Yeah, being aware of what's happening right now, and that reparations only make sense within that context. You know what I'm saying? As far as I am concerned. Sorry, I was trying to find something. There we go. Right. So I'm gonna bring up to go into your next thing, yeah, because I think people need to understand. Now, you can agree or disagree, have criticisms, or want to tweak aspects of this. Yeah, you're entitled to that. Yeah, but understand that we're talking about there is no significant reparations movement that has a conversation about money exclusively or even mostly, although there are some of the points here that money would necessarily be a part of or involved in. It is not just about the money. Okay, so this is the CARICOM 10-point action plan. Yeah, and so may I begin, yeah, because we are dealing with nations and sorry, I'm enlarging in the wrong thing. 1 second. And enough of these leaders in the Caribbean were at the coronation where they by the way, also for Garveyites out there, if you read,
I hope it wasn't on their penny.
Apparently, this was mentioned in the thing. The taxpayers in the Caribbean paid for these sellouts to come over here and kiss the blood cleat ring. Yeah. Anyway, so let's give you some of the background here. Yeah. The Caribbean Reparations Commission asserts that European governments were owners and traders of enslaved Africans, instructed genocidal actions upon indigenous communities. That's the indigenous peoples of the Americas. Yeah, created the legal, financial, and fiscal policies necessary for the enslavement of Africans, defined and enforced African enslavement and nature genocide as in their nation's interest, refused compensation to the enslaved with the ending of their refused compensation to the enslaved with the ending of the enslavement. Yeah, so we have the situation, for example. So again, one of the things that we talk about in terms of money, yeah, whereby Britain as a nation took out a loan to compensate the enslavers for loss of property. So one claim that I have heard is that money should be paid. And also the fact that taxpayers in this country were paying back that loan, yeah, which means that me and you, descendants of enslaved Africans, were paying back the government for the loan that it gave to enslavers. We are paying the government for the compensation that it paid to the enslavers of our ancestors. So the idea is that no, that money should be paid if justice is to be done, and that money was still circulating in the system up until the year 2015. That money should be paid to the descendants of enslaved Africans.
Absolutely. Especially when you think of our history with the Windrush. That means that the Windrush people were paying. If you really
over here, all of us, we're paying into this thing. All right. So refuse compensation to the enslaved,
and that's why it makes me laugh, ShakaRa, when the money aspect, no one has a problem with that. That was only it's not even been 10 years since that stopped. You know, my son was born and we were still paying into that, and no one once said, hold on, why are we still paying slave owners when all these people turn around and say, well, I wasn't a part of slavery, but everyone was happy to pay them. No one said a word.
Do you know how this thing came out, right? This came to public knowledge. I don't think most people knew. This came to public knowledge because the finance ministry tweeted about it, on the anniversary of the final payment or some stupidness like that, so not the anniversary, on the day of the week of the final payments or something like that, as though it was something to celebrate. So people picked up and was like, hold on, it's what I go on. You know what I'm saying? You know, that's how it became a national story in 2015. But let me continue this thing. So the European governments compensated slave owners at emancipation for loss of legal property rights in enslaved Africans, imposed a further 100 years of racial apartheid upon the emancipated, colonialism, imposed for another 100 years policies designated to perpetuate suffering upon the emancipated and survivors of genocide, and have refused to acknowledge such crimes or to compensate victims and their descendants. The context: the CRC is committed to the process of national and international reconciliation. Victims of their descendants have a duty to call for reparatory justice. Their call for justice is is the basis of the closure they seek to the terrible tragedies that engulf humanity during the modernity. The CRC comes into being some 2 generations after the national independence process and finds European colonial rule as a persistent part of Caribbean life. The CRC operates within the context of persistent objection from European governments to its mandate. The CRC nonetheless is optimistic that the CRJP, which I forget what that stands for, will gain acceptance as the necessary path to progress. The CRC sees the pussy's on the move. The CRC sees the persistent racial victimization of descendants of slavery and genocide as the root cause of their suffering today. The CRC recognizes that the persistent harm and suffering experienced today by these victims as a primary cause of the development failure in the Caribbean. It calls upon European governments to participate in the Caribbean reparations justice I can't remember the P program plan. I can't remember. With a view to prepare these victims and sufferers for full admission with dignity into the citizenry of the global community. The CRC here outlines the path to reconciliation, truth, and justice for victims and their descendants. 1, a full formal apology. Yeah, this is the 10-point action plan. So the first point I call is a full formal apology. The descendants of the indigenous peoples subjected to genocide, the loss of several cultures, the erasure of numerous languages require a full and formal apology. The descendants of the enslaved African population subjected to deadly. So this first part deals with not just Africans, but the indigenous peoples of the Americas. Yes, the descendants of enslaved African population subjected to deadly forced migration and the system of colonialism that destroyed their bodies and their cultures require a full and formal apology. Groups subjected to deceptive systems of indenture. So after enslavement, there was a system of indentureship, yeah, which basically was another form of enslavement, deserve a full and formal apology. All the ancestors who were destroyed or affected by colonialism, their descendants alive today, and the future generations require full. So this is the apology section, all right? Then, indigenous peoples development programs. As a result of European conquest and colonization, the indigenous peoples of the member states of CARICOM have been subjected to forced migrations within countries across the region, to brutal work conditions, like, for example, the Panama Canal, yeah, in the late 1800s, early 1900s, and genocide. Indigenous people were brutalized and killed as a result of official instructions to the European military commanders who came to the region. Those who were not immediately killed had their ancestral lands seized, and a community of 3 million people in 1700 was decimated to less than 30,000 in 2000. This also led to the destruction of their languages and a unique cultural heritage, etc., etc. So this is, despite the efforts of the newly developing CARICOM member states, which have inherited the situation, the rebuilding of these communities cannot be done without responsible European states taking on the responsibility of correcting the damage where possible, restoring the communities that still exist. Yeah, funding for repatriation to Africa. Yeah, I'm not going to bother to read this, but because right, let me read a piece of it. The descendants of African people stolen from their homes, lands, people, and cultures have a legal right to return. For unlike indentured workers, the enslaved had no contract guaranteeing the right to return or material incentives to remain. Let me explain that. I'm glad I read it. Let me explain this point. Yeah. So after enslavement, the British, in particular, drafted a number of indentured servants, what they call indentured servants, from places like India and China in particular.
That's
And
right.
they were brought over to the Caribbean with a contract to work for a specific period of time. Upon completing the tenure of their contract, they would be either sent back to their nation of origin or granted resources within the nation that they were taken to. Yeah. So when it says, unlike the indentured workers, the enslaved had no contract guaranteeing a right of return to the homeland or material incentives to remain. So Indians and Chinese and so on in places like Jamaica were granted things like land, yeah, and resources to work land after they finished their indentureship. Africans enslaved never had any of that. Okay, that's
right.
Point. Yeah,
And that was given by the
British government.
British government.
Yeah.
Not only that, the American government did a similar thing where indentures are concerned, and not only for but mostly the people that were given stuff were white people that were migrants from places like Germany and Italy and so on and so forth. Them come here there and them get land, yeah, hard kind of land, yeah, and home and resources and all kind of different things. So these people
pure incentives to stay populate and be merry.
Right? This happened, yeah. And none of that was ever given to enslaved Africans in the United States of America and the descendants of enslaved Africans in the United States of America. Even what was promised in terms of 40 acres and a mule was never given. Yeah.
But ShakaRa, I think it just goes to, when I hear you, it just goes to the sickness within our people to have this rejection of money that is clearly owed. Because we see it in other ethnicities, we understand it and we don't object to it. We don't raise our voices. But as soon as it's us, which is to me, I find we have had the worst, yet there's a fight within ourselves from our own to get what's owed, which will benefit all of us. You know, sometimes and I just think, even if you list it out, which you have done, and I've like picked up some bits as well, it only reiterates to me what is just a fundamental basic, that of course you owe people that you've subjugated so long that you can still see their suffering now. They're owed. So
no, 100%. It can be itemized. There's no doubt about it. And most importantly, all of this is not about peace. Yeah. Let's check number 4. The establishment of cultural institutions and the return of cultural heritage. Yeah. Part of the devastation of European colonization was a deliberate attempt to destroy the cultures and languages of the indigenous peoples, enslaved Africans, and the indentured workers. Generations later, this has left a gap in the knowledge of some of these groups about the history of their ancestors, as well as the inability to deeply appreciate not only the full and complete lives and cultures they had before European colonization, but also the trauma and the destruction they endured during the process, how they eventually gained freedom, and the strides they are taking to slowly rebuild. The restoration of historical memory through community institutions such as museums and research centers will allow citizens to understand these crimes against humanity, as well as other colonial. So this is all about writing the history and restoration of the status, but the integrity and the dignity of African people as far as history is concerned. Yeah. Assistance in remedying the public health crisis. Yeah, that should speak for itself. Okay. You know what I'm saying? There's a reason why healthcare in majority African nations is not what it should be. Yeah. And it has to do with the persistent underdevelopment of the nation economically in general. Yeah. Education programs, again, speaks for itself. The enhancement of historical and cultural knowledge exchanges. Psychological rehabilitation as a result of transmission of trauma.
That's important.
Very important. Very important. Very important.
It's so important.
Right, very important. The right to development through the use of technology. So when you're looking at underdeveloped nations, one of the things that is done is these nations' capacity to acquire and or develop technology is severely retarded. Yeah. And also debt cancellation. Yeah. Now, there are some reparation activists that said actually this should be called debt repudiation, right? So it says debt cancellation and monetary compensation. Now let's read this for the sake of those who want to focus exclusively on money. Yeah. CARICOM governments that emerged from slavery and colonialism have inherited the massive crisis of community poverty and an inability to deal with the development of their countries because of the burdens of the legacy of colonialism. These governments still daily engage in the business of cleaning up the colonial mess, and this forced newly emerging countries to borrow funds in order to meet their own international obligations. CARICOM member states recognize the importance and desirability of providing the highest standards of living to their citizens. Nevertheless, the pressure of development has driven these governments to carry the burden of public employment. But in many majority black nations, the government is the biggest employer of people, yeah, and has led them to create expensive social policies designed to confront colonial legacies. This process has resulted in states accumulating unsustainable levels of public debt. So oftentimes debt is taken out to fund these things, and you know what I'm saying, and that now constitutes fiscal entrapment. Since correct burden of colonialism has fallen on these new states, they are unable to deal with challenges of development without taking on onerous levels of debt. This debt cycle properly belongs to the governments from the responsible European countries who have made no sustained attempt to deal with the debilitating colonial legacies. Support for the payment of domestic debt, the cancellation of international debt, and direct monetary payments where appropriate are necessary reparatory actions to correct the harm caused by colonialism. Yeah. I don't know why that should be difficult to understand.
Coffee, when people think about money, they think about a physical, a couple of £1,000 in somebody's account.
In everybody's bank account.
Yeah.
It's
nonsense. That we're in a capitalistic country.
A lot of the conversation is like, okay, this amount, and then we start to calculate the population of Africans in a given country, and then split it up, and how much is everyone going to get in the back? That's not the thing, right? No, nobody really reasons on that level. Yeah, really and truly. Yeah, no, a nation may choose to do some of that work. Yeah, in terms of giving its citizens a certain amount for whatever reason. Yeah, that may happen. I don't know, right? But that's not really where the argument lies. Yeah. Now let me just do this as well, just to explain beyond the CARICOM thing. This is like the reparations, transitional justice Wikipedia page. Yeah. So these principles are very well established. Yeah, as you can see here, restitution, yeah, measures which serve to restore the victim to the original situation before the gross violations occurred. This can include restoration of liberty, enjoyment of human rights and identity, family life and citizenship, return of one's place of residence, restoration of employment, and a return of property. So, for example, the things then with them teeth were there in the British Museum right here, no, return it. Yeah, all the bedding brands were there in France. Return it, right? Yeah, return the things them. Okay, yeah. All right. Damages. Yeah, number 2. Damages or compensation. The provision of compensation for any economically accessible damage, as appropriate and proportional to the gravity of the violation and the circumstances of each case. Such damages include physical or mental harm, lost opportunities, material damages, and loss of earnings. So, for example, when Italy bomb up Ethiopia during the war in the 1930s, yeah. For example, yeah, moral damage, cost of legal, medical, psychological, and social services, yeah, rehabilitation, medical, psychological, social services, and legal assistance. Satisfaction. That was number 3. satisfaction various measures which include the cessation of human rights violations and abuses, truth seeking, searches for the disappeared, recovery of reburial or remains, judicial and administrative sanctions, public apologies, commemoration, memorialization, etc. Yeah. 5, guarantees of non-repetition, forms of ensuring the prevention of future abuses, including civil control of the military and security forces, strengthening an independent judiciary, protection of civil service and human rights workers, the overall promotion of human rights standards, and the establishment of mechanisms to prevent and monitor social conflicts and conflict resolution. So you see there's 5. Let me repeat them for you just in case on the not get it. 1, restitution. 2, damages compensation. 3, rehabilitation. 4, satisfaction. 5, guarantees of non-repetition. Yeah. This should be clear.
I think it's so beautiful how they've done it. It just feels like in every essence they've made sure that they've tackled it, even down to the point of making sure that you will not do this again. You know.
Kayla, I muted you because of the background noise. Yeah, so feel free to unmute yourself when you're ready to talk. Let me just double check something. Oya, are you with us? Sorry, Sister Kushti. Was you finished? Sorry.
Yeah.
Sorry, I apologize. Oya, are you with us? Oya, come on the panel when no one talk or she no one talk. It's all good. All right, let me dive in the chat quickly. I'm sure I've missed much. So yeah, these are now again, you're entitled to disagree, you know what I'm saying, with some of these things, and maybe the wording, or maybe it's not strong enough for you or whatever else like that. But clearly, clearly, we're not just talking about a handout here. Yeah, that should be obvious to anybody. And I should also say that within the reparations movement, there's considered to be 2 major forms of reparation, and that is internal repair and external repair. And internal repair is what we do for ourselves, and external repair is what others owe us, the pursuit of what others owe us. Yeah. Now, it is considered to be the case that internal repair must be developed to a certain level of organization and implementation before external repair is even viable. Yeah, that is a dominant sensibility within the grassroots reparations movement. And a little bit later on, I'm going to bring up a definition of Baba Chinwezu in relation to the issue of reparations and defining it.
Can I ask you a quick question on this? So with the reparations, I find, to me, it just sounds brilliant, but I'm definitely more of the Pan-African ilk. So I think for some people, I think it's perhaps it doesn't hit home to them because it doesn't affect them in the where they're living in within the diaspora. So for example, a lot of things you had mentioned is in relation to the continent or the Caribbean, which I, you know, as I said, I'm agreement for. But is there any references to the people of the diaspora within the West? Is there anything set up for people within the West? So for example, yeah, I'll just, for example, so when you said there that the external needs to happen because the general consensus is the external needs to happen in order for the internal healing to happen. But for example, facilitating places where we don't have to pay through the roof to congregate in a building which is just for our own, and providing that in order for us to be able to train our own therapists, have that as a hub to heal, to learn, to educate. I think that is an aspect in the diaspora where the external has done its part, where providing that institution, which is kind of owned, and we're doing the works internally to do it, if that makes sense. So
yes, so obviously what I've read was actual, you know, the website of group in the Caribbean. So the focus on the Caribbean is necessitated because of that. But I have heard various different suggestions in relation to educational access. I've even heard a suggestion in relation to tax refund, yeah, for Africans in the UK, because we've all been funding that the reparations that the British gave to
The enslavers.
the enslavers, yeah. So yeah, there are various suggestions of that kind, you know, on the table. You know what I'm saying?
It
At the
just
same
kind of
time,
makes you wonder if they were aware of those things where they'd have a hands-on benefit, would they be more of support? Because that
and this is
disassociation with the continent and Caribbean is so rampant in
and this is the
people
thing, because
in the
I'm not even
diaspora.
impassioned by the idea that we look, if we're connected as we should be to our back home nations, that would not be a problem for us. You know what I'm saying?
Exactly. That's
You know
more
what
of
I'm
an
saying?
incentive to
You know what I'm saying? Yeah. You know what I'm
go back.
saying? So, right. You know what I mean? So there's that. Let me do the chat thing for a bit. I'm gonna meet you again, Kelly, for the background noise. All right. All right. So let's see. There's a lot of conversation going on here. So I'm not going to do the interpersonal conversation. I should say, if you want to ask me a question specifically, at gotkushTV, please, at gotkushTV, so I can notify properly. The Bible and the Quran have been used as a justification. This is true. Ignorance, love to be heard and seen. Indeed. If you haven't learned anything about the uselessness of fiat currency and stimulus in the past couple of years on a hopeless started, well, I've already dealt with that. So again, this is an attempt. So I've said all this stuff about all of the other demands, and the brother brings me back to a thing about fiat currency. At the same time, I would implore you to go and tell this to the American government, the German government, and the Israeli government, because all of them, and the British government, because all of them facilitate and have facilitated and have been facilitating since World War II monetary payments to the state of Israel, monetary payments to the various different museums that exist around the world that commemorate the Jewish Holocaust. Yeah. So if the fiat currency is as worthless as you say it is in relation to reparations, then it should be just as worthless in relation to reparations to African people. Then it should be just as worthless in relation to reparations for all other people. Yeah. So please direct your commentary in that direction.
So just to clarify, they're still getting paid now, currently.
Yeah. So I need to clarify this.
They are.
Right. Okay. Because I know they were still getting those payments up until recently. Right. But yeah. So you're confirming this. Yeah. I will go with you. Yeah. What's it called? Yeah. The Germany still pays the state of Israel a certain amount annually. As reparations. Yeah. Bigging up Baba Afam in the building. Bigging up Baba Afam. You know what I'm saying? Bigging up yourself. You can
Shaka.
Yo.
Shaka, one more thing. Then that would mean that the Pan-Africanists were gonna have to market the unification of the reparation, brother, because it's all this organization movie. The non-Africans will capitalize on that, and then we won't get our fair due, what is owed to us. So
100%. My thing is this: that when the organizing needs to take place anyway, so we just need to do the work that we're doing. Yeah, I don't think reparations is going to be possible if people are not impassioned about what is happening right now. Yeah. You know what I'm saying? So I'm not even so focused on whether them give us the thing or not. I'm more focused on how organized are we as a people. You know what I'm saying? What institutions are we developing for ourselves? Yeah. And so there's a couple years ago, the year before last, there was a recall of the demand, or the request, I should say, for the return of the Benin bronzes. Yeah. And the Minister of Culture in this country came out and said, look, yeah, we're not getting them back. Yeah, them belong yasa, and them have stay yasa. Yeah. And he said, if you don't want it in Nigeria, where the things them come from, you can get it on loan, we'll lend it to you for a period, and then get back to it. Yeah. So exactly. But I'm saying there's no way to remedy that situation except we develop some form of nationhood that is strong enough to make that demand from a position of power. For example, if on a return the Benin brands, we are going to impose economic sanctions on the nation in this, and this, and that's fourth way. If we don't impose the Benin, return the Benin brands, we are going to send our military to retrieve it.
Right.
Yeah.
But brother ShakaRa, I will say though, right, I think going for reparation does not equate to not doing self-development. Both can exist.
No,
And I
of
think
course.
it's just this notion that if you're going for reparations, you got your hands out begging. When the other nations are building up Israel while taking up money, they're doing the same thing together at the same time. Like,
No,
we
of course.
need to have an elevated thought on this, especially if we're comparing to other nations. Make sure we're comparing, like you've shown, in every sense. So going for that, and then going for what you've just said now in regards to, if you don't do it that way, we should start doing a military and moving a bit more militant with these people. I bet you any money they will choose the latter. They'll be happily to choose the reparations over that. Do you know what I mean? Because that would be
and that is the point.
Exactly.
And that is the point. But as I've already said, for me,
so going both makes sense because you know which
100%.
one they will choose.
The key to reparations for me in our current context is the capacity that the movement has to educate our people and raise the consciousness of our people. Yeah. I think that few campaigns have the scope that the reparations campaign has to do that, because we're not only dealing with historical injustices, we're not only dealing with enslavement, we're also dealing with colonization, we're also dealing with neo-colonization, which is a present day issue. Yeah. And so I'm not one of them people that is scared to beat the drum of reparations because somebody's going to call me refer to me as begging. It's ridiculous. And the only people that do that are those who are in defense of Britain, America, France, Portugal, and the rest of those wicked, evil nations and their institutions. So yeah, I'm gonna ignore most of the money conversation now, because I feel like I've dealt with it, and so it then becomes a deliberate distraction.
Absolutely. That's another question though. In regards to the child thing that you've talked about, just going back on your topic, as you say, you don't want to focus on the money thing. If they did open the doors, I was trying to think, what would be the kind of things? Do you wonder what kind of things that we'd be looking for? Would you be, or would the scholars among us be? What area would they be going for? So, for example, we're talking about colonization. I'm assuming that's more government led, right? And this is monarchy led, which then opens the door. So I think it'll open the more of the doors towards slavery than perhaps colonization. This is in my ignorance, so please correct me if I'm wrong.
Repeat your question so I understand it properly. Sorry, go on.
Yeah, so for example, right, the monarch is saying that they're opening up the doors. So the scholars, the Pan-African scholars among us, I wonder where would they go first? Where would they go? What kind of information would they go to first? Because if we're talking about most recent history, I think that would be British government led rather than monarchy led, because the monarchies, their power was more in further back in history. So I'm assuming the kind of information that would be released would be information more relation to further back in history. So in regards to slavery times, more than in regards to colonization. And some of the things that I would be interested to see would be perhaps when they sat down in the Berlin conference, would any information be there? Or definitely maybe with the jewelry that they've got, because they're actually wearing the jewelry, so that would probably be more information there. So have you wondered what kinds of areas would they be going to, knowing that it's specifically monarchy based information in relation to their association to slavery or colonization or the continent and the Caribbean?
So for as far as I'm aware, most of there are areas of research that would need to be pursued, among the scholars, but much of the research that justifies the claim in the first place has already been done.
Yeah.
So really, it would just be extra, icing on the cake, so to speak.
Like
At
the
the same
detail.
time, right, exactly. At the same time, one of the things that I do know is the one of the demands that is associated with the
Bless you.
the reparations march in London is concerned, or in the UK is concerned, is a bipartisan parliamentary commission of inquiry.
That was a mouthful.
Right. So what that means is that the case for reparations and the information that justifies the case will be put before the country by the parliament, or in the parliament, if that makes sense. Or should I say the case will be heard in the parliament. And so the scholars who are doing the work will be called upon to present the case and
in parliament.
Yes.
That's problematic.
Or no, we're not. Well, it's done that way because parliament is the government. That's the only reason why, right? Where that is concerned. So, but the parliament will be put together in conjunction with organizations that makes sense. Sorry, not the parliament. The inquiry would not be put together by the parliament itself.
It's quite hard to hear, Brother ShakaRa.
Sorry. Yeah, the parliament itself would not be the sole organizers of the inquiry, but they would facilitate the resources to make it happen. Okay, and the entire government, that's why it's called bipartisan. Every single party in the parliament would be duty bound to invest and engage in the process. So I don't know. Now I'm not up on the details.
So what you're saying there, is that definitely going to happen, or is that a suggestion?
No. It's why the demands.
Oh, okay.
I should say by it's so okay. So let me bring up this here. So this is a part of the stop the my uncle. I don't like to just talk here. So you can see that I'm not just talking. I'm actually speaking to the reality of the situation. So this is the petition of the Stop the Maangamizi campaign in 2018. The Stop the Maangamizi campaign is a partner of the African Emancipation Day Reparations March Committee. That organized the reparations march on the 1st of Messiah every year in London.
That to do with Sister Esther.
Yes.
Okay.
Sister Esther stands for Jose, right? So according to the United Nations Basic Principles and Guidelines on the right to remedy and reparations for victims of gross violations of international human rights law and serious violations of international humanitarian law, an essential aspect of reparations include, among other measures, investigation of the facts, official acknowledgement and apology, receipt of answers, an opportunity for victims to speak in a public forum about his or her experiences, and to have active involvement in the reparative process. We, as members of the African heritage community, rejecting forced assimilation and seeking forms of national autonomy and self-determination, therefore advocate the need for honest dialogue between legitimate representatives of African heritage communities, the British government, parliament, and other interested states and non-state bodies within and beyond the UK on how best to redress the harmful legacies of enslavement. We urge that this dialogue takes place by establishing an all-party parliamentary commission of inquiry for truth and reparatory justice to acknowledge the fundamental injustice, cruelty, brutality, and inhumanity of the imposition of the Maangamizi African Holocaust of chattel, colonial, and neo-colonial enslavement within and beyond the British Empire, examine subsequent de jure and de facto racial and economic discrimination against Africans and people of African descent, examine the impact of these forces on living Africans and African descent communities, etc., 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 etc. Yeah, so that is the proposal on hand. Well, that is
Yeah, but ShakaRa, right? When that does be put forward, right? Because remember, we have to analyze the political science, because it weren't just the British. You know, it's the Roman Catholic Church of England, the Jewish community, the Arabs, the European, East Indians. Do you understand? So they could easily say, well, we know what we did, but what about the rest? So don't you think that the elders, I've heard some stuff what some of the elders were saying, but don't you think we should put all that together while we're dealing with that, so they don't kind of say, well, what about those individuals? We have to wait until we get confirmation from the evidence what they've done. Don't you think we should all put it all together? What all of them do?
Like, you mean put it together with the Indian them and so on?
And the Arabs and all of it, Church of England, Roman Catholic, all of that.
I don't know. I don't think we necessarily need to do that. I think that that whereas the Indians have their own case, they'll make their case, and if there's room for solidarity, then we stand in solidarity with them, and vice versa. You know, whereas the indigenous peoples in the Americas the same. You know what I'm saying? Those who are in China and Hong Kong, if that ever happens, right? You know, are legitimately able to do the same. Then if there is strategically room for solidarity, then we support. But I think that we need to prioritize.
No, brother. I think you misunderstood what I said. Remember, the reparations is not just from the British; it's the Europeans, the Arabs.
I see what you're saying.
You understand? Because remember, yeah.
No. I'm saying that this is being put forward by citizens of the country. Yeah. So that's why it's specific. Anything else is a part of a broader conversation. Yeah. And people that deflect in that kind of way, because the reality is that the institutions that were responsible for this to a significant degree still exist and dominate the world globally, politically, economically as a result, yeah, which is not necessarily the same in the same way for everybody else. Okay, so it's a deflection, and I get it. I don't know if I want to chase every deflection down the road, if that makes sense. Yeah. If we're going to speak to the Arabs, then we're going to speak to the Arabs, but the British government is not going to be the ones who we speak to the Arabs through, or we're not going to speak to the Arabs because the British government says we should. Yeah. So I'm going to check out the chat now and check out the you know, the good conversations as well as the attempted deflections. I'm sure there are many of both. So yeah, there's a lot of conversation in here about money again. The Queen can keep her damn blood money. Just leave me free to do my. But again, so that's why, Lord of mercy. So this is why part of the claim is cessation. I don't understand. I've said it many times. Yeah, like, you know what I'm saying? There's cessation and there's guarantees of non-repetition. So what part of it is acknowledging the fact that many of these injustices are still going on today, and them need to stop. Them not leave we alone. Yeah, them not do it. Yeah, so. You know what I'm saying?
Bro,
that's the point, right? So all of that. So when we're organizing to do our own thing and so on and so forth, every time, it's another part of the program. Every time, yes, we put forward programs, organizations, institutions to do for ourselves, we are met with the attack, yes, from these same people, their governments and their institutions. Yeah, the destruction of the UNIA ACO, or the attempted destruction of the UNIA ACO, the Black Star Line, the Negro Fractured Corporation, the confiscation of the property, yes, documents, as well as property, as well as land that was owned by the UNIA ACO. Yeah, that is a reparations issue. Okay, the assassination of Omowale Malcolm X and Patrice Lumumba, the imprisonment, yeah, of Assata Shakur, the assassination of Dedan Kimati, the imprisonment of Mama Nomzamo Madikizela, and the torture of Mama Nomzamo Madikizela. These are all
Countless
issues.
coups.
Right, because these instances and so many more reflect exactly what this thing says. Yeah, just leave me free to do my thing. Elect who you want, do business who you want, I'll take care of the. That's exactly what the people they were fighting for. Leave we alone. Come out of our land. We don't want you wrong, yeah, for dominate with economy and with political development anymore. Leave we alone. Make we do what them never do it.
Shaka, you're gonna have to break down how they're eating from us. Like, I don't think people actually understand that they are R-wording us, like in real time right now. That stops
Look at it. Look at
us
it.
from
So we're
climbing.
asking them for the knowledge and the culture they took away. It's we. So obviously, right? So obviously, all of that. So obviously, the thing that was said about internal repair was lost on or maybe he wrote this before I said it. So hopefully the brother is now wiser since I've said that. Yeah, and no, the idea that anyway, yeah. So
Yeah, brother ShakaRa, right? I just want to get something clarified, right? So what you're saying is we're going to the British first, and then the Arab, then the East Indians, then the Jewish community. Yeah.
No, let me say this. Let me say this. No, because all of them are not reparations issues in the same way. All right, but so I'm still responding to the comment here. Yeah, one of the casualties of the destabilization and the retardation of our economies is the fact that our education systems have been severely underdeveloped. Yeah, you cannot divorce your education system from the overall development of your nation. Cannot divorce your healthcare system from the overall development of your nation. The idea is that our nations have been made into cash crop economies that serve the interests of colonizers. Okay, so to the extent that these colonizers have reaped significant proportions of wealth and resources from us, our land, and our people, there is a just demand for the return of those resources. If they never consider, and you all who make these arguments don't consider referring to the Europeans in the same way when they do the robbing and the thieving. Yeah. For some reason, they don't pay for the labor, they don't pay for the resources, and so on and so forth. This is not considered an act of welfare, so to speak. It's very interesting. But then when African people, because you don't say it to the Jews, you don't say it to the Maori, right? You don't say it to the indigenous peoples of the Americas. Whenever Africans say, well, actually return some of that. Yeah. You see, you America, return where you did tea from Haiti. Yeah. And you see the agricultural industry that you destroyed, return or restore the resources, the value of the resources that you destroyed. So the value of the land, the value of the technology that was in trade at that point, as well as the value that would have developed from that time until now, had that industry been allowed to grow without your intervention. Return the value of those things to the people. That's a handout.
could elaborate on what I was saying, big up to you, man.
All on there, Kel. Greetings. Great reason is I want to acknowledge my president, Baba Sengo Jawara Baye of the UNIA ACL RC 2020. This is the man who sat in the seat of Papa Garvey. He's the 10th President General of the UNIA ACL, and now acts as its first assistant President General. So bigging up Baba Sengo. And he said, we as Africans must organize, and never allow monetary distractions where it relates to reparations to and just repair mentality, reparations and just repair mentally, spiritually, and physically. I agree, Baba Sengo. Yeah. Go ahead, Kel.
Absolutely.
So we're talking about, for example, the reparation. You're saying that the scholars, the elders, are saying that we're going to go to the British and get this clarified, right? However, you and I know it weren't just the Europeans; it was the Arabs as well, the East Indians, the Jewish, and the Church of England, Roman Catholic, as it pertains to upon these religions. So, my question was to you: are we going individually to get the reparation back from these people, or are we doing it as one? As okay, we're going to the British Parliament, right, for example, and because all of these were connected, this is what we want. Or are we saying get it from the British first, then the Arabs, then the East Indians, and etc. etc.
What is being said is that the situations are different. Okay, the European, Western world, and Europe in general ran an international trade that included African enslaved people that contributes to the world as it is run today in ways that doesn't necessarily apply in the same way to other groups of people in relation to Africans. If and when we have to talk to other groups of people, we're going to talk to them on our own terms, in our own way. That has no bearing on how and when we choose to talk to the British and the French and so on and so on and so forth. Baba Chinwezu has an organization or a campaign in relation to the domination of the Arabs in North Africa. Yes, and what that represents and what that means and the treatment of indigenous Africans in North Africa as a result. It's a different conversation, is the point that is being made. Yeah, right. So when we're dealing with this, especially in Britain, as it stands right about now, and it's not necessarily one or the other. It's not something we deal with the British first, or there are simultaneous things that need to take place. Yeah. But we don't want to confuse, and we're not supposed to put ourselves in a position whereby, because the British may ask us, then we have to be able to tell them what we're going to say to the Arabs. It's not your business what we say to the Arabs. You know what I'm saying? Especially because, quite frankly, when it comes to colonization, some of the groups that you mentioned have a case against the British too. You know what I'm saying? So yeah, it's a whole next thing. You know what I'm saying?
Yeah, but still, Shaka, they may have a case, but remember, our case is separate. They all participated.
That is the point that I'm making. That is the point that I'm making. We don't need to confuse, and we don't need to put ourselves in a situation whereby, because they're going to ask us this, that, and the whatnot, we feel that we need to show them that we're no. If and when we talk to the rest of them, we'll talk to the rest of them. Yeah, we'll talk to the rest of them. Right, do you know what I'm saying? And that's a whole next level of education and so on and so forth that needs to get done. Yeah, and that's that. What's it called?
I think as well, people think that reparation is the only, people are saying that, or Pan-Africans are saying that reparation is the only key to get out.
No, it's
not that. So yes, we understand that there's corrupt governments in both the Caribbean and Africa, and 7 trillion, like a comment just said, 7 trillion going into education makes everything okay, ShakaRa. I don't think you're saying that reparation is the only key. Yeah, it's just
It's a silly statement. So you haven't, obviously, now again, I said ones are entitled to disagree or critique the program, but then that's not an intelligent criticism. Like you've negated everything, you've focused on one point and said 7 trillion for education as though education was the only thing on the 10-point program. It's not intelligent. And why do you have to engage in these unintelligent reasonings? What's it called? So like, again, disagree, but disagree intelligently. Yeah, I have my disagreements. I, for one, to do with, I think something like you were just saying, Kushti. I'm a stickler for the idea, and there are many in the reparations movement in the Caribbean. I already done said, you know, people need to listen to what I'm saying. There are many in the grassroots reparations movement who have very serious concerns about the extent to which governments in the Caribbean are hijacking the reparations agenda. Did anybody hear me say that earlier on? I'm relatively sure I said this.
You did.
Yeah, you did.
Right. Okay. Right. For me personally, the governments of the Caribbean do not have the legitimacy to lead a reparations campaign and a reparations movement simply because they have not reconciled their neo-colonial tendencies with the masses of the people. For example, in a nation like Jamaica, in which the government has yet to properly recognize the injustice that was perpetrated against the Rastafari community in 1963, less than a year after Jamaica was granted its independence, known as the Coral Gardens Massacre. Yes, the government is yet to properly recognize, yes, and sufficiently engage in reparatory justice in relation to the Rastafari communities and some of the elders who were victims of that massacre, some of whom are still alive today.
Right.
Yeah. So how can that government lead or be part of the leadership of a reparations campaign? There are many who are saying this. And if ones and ones are involved in the reparations movement and concerned to understand it, they would know or be in environments to learn these things.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
But currently, are the governments leading the charge?
What the CARICOM Reparations Commission involves governments and related intellectuals and activists. Yeah. So there are many things that levels to it, but the governments are the ones who are fronting the case against the British government as it stands at the moment. You see what I'm saying? So it's important, yeah, and it's like,
it's so true. So it goes down to what you say. There are genuine criticisms to be had. So why not
100%?
Yeah, why not talk about those? Then
and
to
you
just
notice
chuck
I
the
said
whole-
that from the very beginning. Before I read it, I said that from the very beginning. Yeah, and so we have an issue whereby, and what it is that those who are opposed to reparatory justice in relation to African people, again, as I've already said, never say these things when it comes to reparatory justice in relation to others. Secondly, those who are opposed to reparatory justice in relation to African people simply do so out of an allegiance, yeah, to Western imperialist nations and nation states.
That's right.
Because these people go around the world, yeah, and wage war and demand people institute systems of reparations when it's in their interest.
Yeah.
Right? You see what I'm saying? That happens all the time. I've never heard any of these campaigners talk about handouts and what is the value of the fiat currency, and if you put 7 trillion into a Holocaust memorial museum, you know what is the value of that, and everything's all right.
They wouldn't dare to even
never heard that before. Yeah, never heard that before. Yeah, never heard that before. Okay, so this is the reality of the situation. Yeah, and so what's going to happen is that they're gonna stay in the chat and continue to misrepresent the thing in relation to, as opposed to engaging it intelligently and sensibly, right? In the hope that they will deter some people from actually looking into,
Very unsynchronized, brother, man. People.
Yeah, again, because I've been around a long time, you know. I'm very astute. I know where criticism is coming from. In fact, let me share that with you now. Yeah, I'm gonna share. I'm gonna share a link in the chat now where there's a group of brothers and sisters critiquing the CARICOM reparations program.
Right, while you're doing that, it seems as though you're not really in support in regards to any form of reparation regarding those in the diaspora, or did I read that wrong?
No. What I'm saying is that when we talk, the issues are not divorced from each other. Is the point I'm making? Yeah. So I'm saying that I don't need to separate, you know, the us and the diaspora from so and so.
Oh no, and I'm absolutely doing it.
No, I know you're not saying. I know you're not suggesting that. So I don't mean to suggest that that's what you're suggesting. Yeah.
Yeah.
All I'm saying is that if we are,
because I don't, for example, I don't see anything on those points in regards to the people.
No, because it's CARICOM. That's what I'm saying. But a bipartisan parliamentary commission of inquiry relates to us in the UK. Yeah, I'm saying, and so it will look at remedies for specifically us in the UK. Yeah, that's what I'm saying, right? Sorry, maybe I didn't make that point clear. Okay, so yeah, that's just the basic nature of the thing. There is no reason why, and this is what some groups are trying to do at the moment. Yeah, there's no reason why, and it will be folly for us to see the reparations issue as completely separated from each other based upon who was colonized by who and so on and so forth. Yeah, because enslavement and colonization was a pan-European enterprise. Yeah? Right? It was. They all collaborated with each other. What's it called? I'll give you another example of what I mean. All this talk about money, this, that, and the what next. Yeah, when Britain mash up itself after Mass European War II. Yes, the restoration of Britain and a significant portion of Europe was funded by America. Yeah, America, because it wasn't in the state of disrepair that Europe was, it gave millions to Britain and other European nations to help them restore themselves. Because they all understood America knew it had a responsibility to maintain white power in the world. Yeah, I see. Sorry, my brother Tyler was in the place and he had a question. Random question. Kamikaina in and out, so apologies. Does a reparations movement require actual Pan-African nationalism? In my humble opinion, it does. I don't see any other viable context for it to take place. Otherwise, we're just facilitating neocolonialism as it stands at the moment. Yeah. So, you know, I would agree with that, personally speaking. And there are, as I said already, there are attempts to de-revolutionize and neoliberalize the reparations movement. I agree with reparations, but as a form of tax put on Western and other nations that done us bad, but they can't get enforced unless you do it from a place of power, which is what I've already said. What's it called?
And I think
so these delusions take place, right? So the British economy went into decline after World War II. It wasn't American aid that made her prosperous, but better economic policies of Thatcher. Thatcher didn't come around until the late 70s, 1979. Yeah, but you notice he's not denying the fact that America did sent this aid. Right. So again, this is what you call a deflection. Yeah. Right. It wasn't the aid that made the aid did nothing. Yeah. It was there was nothing happened until Thatcher got in power in 1979. And all this is about, by the way, is he's fighting Cold War. Right. So basically what happened was after Mass European War II, the left side, the Labour Party, was a dominant party in power. Why? Because the country recognized that it needed to have a social system in order to recover and safeguard its citizens after World War II. Yeah. And so because he's following, you know, Milton Friedman, Ronald Reagan, and Margaret Thatcher, he has to downplay the role that the Labour Party played in the economics of development of Britain up until Thatcher came into power.
But I mean, Thatcher was well after World War II.
That's the point. It's like a whole 40 years. Like, you know what I'm saying? It's like, you know what I'm saying? That's going into the 80s. Nonsense. But the fact of the matter is, nobody is repudiating America for giving the aid. That is the point. Yeah, America did give the aid, not just to Britain, but to other parts of Europe. Yeah, they gave the aid.
And there's no white people saying, "Oh, we stop begging, and we don't need it."
Exactly. At a time when Britain was still trying to hold on to its colonies in Africa and the Caribbean, and and Asia. Yeah. At that time, at a time when America was fighting its own African citizens who were simply fighting for civil rights.
That's right.
At a time when America was espousing the dangers of affirmative action for Africans in America, America was aiding Britain. Yeah? All of this was going on at the same time. Yeah? I appreciate it when people bring me intelligent arguments, you know, and honest ones as well. It's impossible for me to have read, the entire CARICOM 10-point program, to have read from the documentation of the Stop the Maangamisi campaign, and to be getting some of these comments that I'm getting and expect me to take it seriously as though these are intelligent and sincere talking points.
Exactly.
You know what I'm saying? Like, it's ridiculous at this point. Yeah, it's ridiculous at this point. I wanted to read something because we're gonna wrap up soon. I'm already like 15 minutes over what I would normally do. So let me so I'm gonna read you a definition of sorts, of reparations that is provided by Baba Chinwezu, and this was put forward in 1993 at the Reparations Conference, the first Pan-African Conference on Reparations in Abuja, Nigeria, April 27th, 1993. Yeah, so that's 30 years ago. All right. Almost to the month.
So this was the first meeting, correct?
Yeah, the first meeting in the modern era, basically, the modern age.
Yeah, in the modern age, of course. Yeah.
So a significant amount of the delegations from Britain were there, America was there, do you know what I'm saying? And so on and so forth. So let me see. So he says, now, what are we, the Black world, going to contribute to the making of these changes? Let me begin by noting that reparations is not just about money. It is not even mostly about money. In fact, money is not even 1% of what reparations is about. Reparations is mostly about making repairs, self-made repairs on ourselves, mental repairs, psychological repairs, cultural repairs, organizational repairs, social repairs, institutional repairs, technological repairs, economic repairs, political repairs, educational repairs, repairs of every type that we need in order to recreate sustainable Black societies. For the sad truth is that 5% of our Holocaust have made our For the sad truth is that 5 centuries of our Holocaust have made our societies brittle and unviable. And as the great Marcus Garvey warned over 50 years ago, if we continue, we are heading for extinction. More important than any monies to be received, more fundamental than any land to be recovered, is the opportunity that the reparations campaigns offers us for the rehabilitation of Black people, by Black people, for Black people, opportunities for rehabilitation on our minds, our material conditions, our collective reputation, our cultures, our memories, our self-respect, our religious our political traditions, our families, institutions, but first and foremost, the rehabilitations of our minds. Let me repeat, the most important aspect of reparations is not the money the campaign may or may not bring. The most important part of reparations is our self-repair, the change it will bring about in our understanding of our history, of ourselves, and of our destiny, the chance it will bring about in our place in the world. Yeah, I'm gonna stop there. You can read the document if you want to. The title of the document is Reparations and the New Global Order, a comparative overview by Professor Chinwezu, a paper read at the second plenary session of the first Pan-African Conference on Reparations, Abuja, Nigeria, April 27th, 1993. So as I have
30 years ago, and you
30 years
said
ago, right?
exactly the same thing as what we were saying.
So if you want to understand, yeah, you know, I'm not fabricating that, and I've brought evidence to back up everything that I'm saying about what
We
is
give
being
thanks,
focused on,
ShakaRa.
right? Say again?
We give thanks for that, and that's
No
okay.
problem. No problems. Yeah. So as I've already said, for me, the major virtue of the reparations campaign as it stands at the moment is engaging our people in a proper analysis of our conditions and the problems that we are facing at the moment. Unless we do that, we're not going to solve these problems. Yeah, that's a reality. Okay, that is a reality. And the consciousness and the awareness of our people in relation to these issues is very often at a very low level, commensurate to where it needs to be for us to be able to solve these problems. Yeah. So it's very important that we understand that. It's very important that we set the record straight. Yeah. And obviously, as we've seen today, we're going to have brothers and sisters and others who, for whatever motivation, are going to try and misrepresent the thing. Okay. I would hope that people have more integrity than to do that, but it may or may not be the case. Yeah, it may or may not be the case. Having said that, whatever happens with the reparations movement, as Sister Kush has said, there is no mutual exclusivity between the work that we do for ourselves, the organizing that we do for ourselves, the institutions that we build for ourselves, and the pursuit of reparatory justice. Yeah, there is no mutual exclusivity within these things. Okay, and anybody who does consider that to be the case, those things to be mutually exclusive, needs to educate themselves more on the reparations movement in all sincerity. All right. And I'm going to leave that there. We're over time, so I'm going to say blessings to Kush and to Kale. Oya, are you with us? Oya came like early enough.
Oh yeah.
Oya, like, let's go on talk. Let us come through and just sit down on the panel.
Oh yeah, we give you
Don't
love
want
still.
You know what I'm saying? So yeah, blessings, Oya. You know what I mean? You know, to you, you know what I'm saying? Kale, you got a last word before we duck?
Yeah, man. Good show, ShakaRa, man. Wicked show, man. And 21 black and green flag salute to everyone, man. And some people.
Yeah, give thanks, Kale. Kush, you got a final word?
Yeah, brilliant show, bro. I'm glad that you've come to the people, to your family, and you've done this as a regular thing. Keep it up. I'm sure it will grow. I'll be joining as much time as I can to show my support. Yeah, so it was another great show. It was educational and it was entertaining, and it just goes to show to people that two can still happen. So yeah, give thanks for being an example of it, bro.
Give thanks.
Later.
I'm gonna let everyone go. All right. I encourage ones and ones, yeah, to check out the last show, specifically because I was blessed, yeah, to be able to read the voice of Baba Jean-Jacques Dessalines, yeah. Brother Setem Imhotep has done some beautiful creative work in using in and reconstructed Baba Dessalines' diary, yeah, and it's a powerful piece of work. Yeah, it's a powerful piece of work. So I encourage ones and ones to check out the previous show. Yeah, check out the previous show And yeah, man, you know, check out that particular reading right there. It was beautiful, it was powerful, and I enjoy things such as that. Yeah. The last thing I will say on this before closing the show is that some years ago there was a campaign that began in the UK. Yeah, began in the UK. And it was called Haiti First, Haiti Now. And it was a reparations campaign that was centered around beginning a broader reparations movement by securing the repayment and the return of the money that was effectively stolen from Haiti. If you look at the circumstances under which Haiti gave France that money in 1825, yeah, as reparations for loss of property, Haiti had to literally pay France for waging its own revolution. All this, it's very important that we understand these things. Haiti picked up arms, liberated the island, and formed a nation that abolished slavery and didn't ask anybody for anything. Yeah? Even what was justifiably owed. And the people them went to Haiti. The British, who were at war with the French, engaged in a ceasefire and granted France safe passage, yeah, to see a go Haiti. They granted France safe passage to go to Haiti, and France ended up on the shores of Haiti 20 years after the revolution, with hundreds of cannons trained on the island. Hundreds of cannons trained on the island, and said, give us so and so amount of money, which is in the tunes of tens of billions today, as reparation for loss of property. Haiti was paying that debt into the 1940s, I believe, as enforced by a pan-European axis. And when we say, give back the Haiti people their money, them tell me, say, well, why you beg for handout? Hold on there. America, after all of that, yeah, Haiti appear mash up the. By the way, Haiti was providing free education to its citizens, yeah, and had to stop because so much of its money was being sent to pay the French, yeah. Then now, just under 100 years later, America invaded the island. They thief, I don't even know how much worth in gold. I'm sure it's millions worth in gold. Yes, from Haiti. Thief! Them take it go America. The gold still there, America. They destroy the agricultural industry. Yeah? Them destroy the agricultural industry. And you say, well, America, give back 80 the gold where you're the thief. The value of the gold where you're the thief from them time there. Yeah, give back to them, right? And give them back the value of them land where you did mash up. When you invade the people them island. Yeah, give back. And them say, why you look for handout? I don't understand people, Hey, I want serious thing, Hey, mental bondage. Bobby Asa Hillian said, mental bondage is invisible violence Formal physical slavery has ended, but mental slavery continues to this day. This slavery affects the minds of our people, and in some ways is worse than physical formal slavery alone. That is to say, the person who is in mental bondage will be self-contained. Not only will that person fail to challenge the beliefs and patterns of thought which control them, they will defend and protect these beliefs and patterns of thought virtually with their last dying effort. Virtually with their last dying effort. Mental bondage is invisible violence. Tendai Mwali, be thankful unto the Mother, Father, creative life force of the universe, called Zai Muzimu Mokuro. Give praises unto our great ancestors, because our ancestors are worthy to be praised. Abibi Fahodie, Abibi Tumi, African liberation and African power for all African people. Ashe, Ashe, Ashe.
Fire burn them dirty king, blaze up them dirty king, fire burn them king, send him disastrous, and time he fast with us, ancestors walk with us, fire burn them king.
Mina bakabusi nengre me fele sama.
Mina bakabusi nengre mine pele obiama. Mina bakabusi nengre me fele sama.
Mina bakabusi nengre mine pele obiama. Mina bakabusi nengre me fele sama.
Mina bakabusi nengre mine pele obiama. Mina bakabusi nengre me fele sama.
Mina bakabusi nengre mine pele obiama. Mina bakabusi nengre me fele sama.
Mina bakabusi nengre mine pele obiama. Mina bakabusi nengre me fele sama.
Mina bakabusi nengre mine pele obiama. Mina bakabusi nengre me fele sama.
Mina